Chapter 1. The Treasure Beneath the Sands. The twin suns of Drusara beat down relentlessly, their searing heat radiating across the endless dunes of fine, golden sand. The planet, long abandoned by civilized societies, was a place where time seemed to stand still. Wind swept through the valleys between the dunes, creating an eerie, haunting melody that carried far across the barren landscape. Most regarded Drusara as a desolate wasteland, a place where only fools or the truly desperate ventured. For Ethan Graves, it was a land of untapped potential. Ethan crouched beside his tectonic scanner, the device humming faintly as it probed the sands below. A rough wind tugged at his dust-stained clothing and tousled his unkempt brown hair, but he barely noticed. His focus was entirely on the scanner's readout, its holographic display flickering in front of him. Lines and grids danced across the interface, mapping the subterranean layers of sand, rock, and long-forgotten ruins. "Come on," Ethan muttered under his breath. "Show me something good." For years, Ethan had made a living as a prospector, scouring remote and inhospitable planets for artifacts, rare metals, and anything else of value. Most of his finds had been mundane chunks of ore, broken machinery, and the occasional trinket from long-dead civilizations. But Drusara, 4 was different. The planet was steeped in legend, its sands rumored to hide the remnants of a civilization so advanced that its technology bordered on magic. The scanner beeped suddenly, its tone sharp and insistent. Ethan's heart leapt, and he leaned closer to the display. A dense object lay buried 30 feet below the surface, something metallic and large. The readings were erratic, suggesting that the object was layered with unknown materials. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice tinged with excitement. "This is the big one." He grabbed his excavation pod, a compact drilling machine equipped with a retractable claw, and set it to work. The pod burrowed into the sand with mechanical precision, sending plumes of golden dust into the air. Ethan watched eagerly as the holographic readout updated in real time, the object's shape gradually becoming clearer. It wasn't just a chunk of metal, it was something more intricate, something deliberately constructed. Unearthing the find. Hours passed as the pod dug deeper, and the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson. Ethan worked tirelessly, his anticipation growing with each passing moment. When the pod finally reached the object, it latched onto it with its claw and began the slow process of extraction. As the pod surfaced, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The object it carried was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a capsule, roughly the size of a small car, its surface sleek and smooth, yet etched with faint, glowing patterns that pulsed with a gentle blue light. The material was unlike any metal he had encountered, light yet impossibly strong, as though it were forged from starlight itself. "What the hell are you?" Ethan murmured, running his gloved hand over the capsule's surface. The glowing patterns seemed to react to his touch, shifting and swirling like liquid light. A faint hum emanated from within, resonating with a strange, almost melodic quality. Ethan's excitement was tempered by unease. This was no ordinary artifact, this was something alive with purpose. He activated his analysis tool, a small handheld device that scanned the capsule and attempted to identify its composition. The device beeped in frustration, unable to process the readings. The material defied categorization, and the energy signatures were unlike anything in his database. "Great," Ethan muttered. "Not even a hint." Suddenly, the capsule emitted a soft hiss. Ethan jumped back as a seam appeared along its center, a faint line of light splitting the capsule in two. The air grew heavy with anticipation as the top half of the capsule slid open with a slow, deliberate motion. Inside, cradled in a cocoon of shimmering light, was a figure. The alien girl. Ethan's breath caught as he stared at the being within. She was humanoid in shape, but unmistakably alien. Her skin was a deep, iridescent shade of violet, with faint patterns that glowed faintly in the dim light. Her hair, long and flowing, shimmered like liquid silver, and her closed eyes were framed by delicate, inhumanly sharp features. A faint, rhythmic rise and fall of her chest indicated that she was alive, sleeping, perhaps, but alive. "What in the galaxy?" Ethan whispered, unable to tear his eyes away. The cocoon of light surrounding her began to fade, the glowing energy retreating into the walls of the capsule. With a soft exhale, the alien girl's eyes fluttered open. They were unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, large, luminous, and filled with a swirling spectrum of colors that seemed to shift and change like a living aurora. The girl blinked slowly, her gaze locking onto Ethan. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence stretching taut between them. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but clear, like the chime of distant bells. "Where am I?" Ethan stared, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. "You're on Dressara 4, he said cautiously. "I found you buried in the sand." The girl's expression shifted, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. "Dressara, the sands. I was hiding." "Hiding?" Ethan repeated, frowning. "From what?" Before she could answer, the capsule's glowing patterns flared suddenly, their intensity almost blinding. A series of sharp, mechanical beeps filled the air, followed by a burst of static that made Ethan's earpiece crackle. "What the dash?" Ethan began, but his words were cut off as a holographic display projected itself from the capsule, filling the air with scrolling text and strange symbols. The girl's expression darkened, her eyes narrowing as she studied the display. "They found me," she whispered, her voice laced with fear. "Who's they?" Ethan asked, his heart pounding. The girl turned to him, her luminous eyes pleading. "You must help me. Please." A fateful decision. Ethan hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to run. He had no idea who or what this girl was, but the urgency in her voice was impossible to ignore. She was in danger, and somehow, he had stumbled into the middle of it. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "But you need to tell me what's going on." The girl nodded, though her expression remained tense. "I will explain everything, but we need to leave now. They are coming." As if on cue, a distant rumble echoed across the dunes. Ethan turned, his blood running cold as he spotted a series of dark shapes on the horizon. Ships sleek and angular, their engines glowing ominously, were descending toward the planet's surface. "Looks like you weren't kidding," Ethan muttered, quickly gathering his gear. "Come on, my ship's not far from here." The girl climbed out of the capsule with surprising agility, her movements fluid and graceful despite her apparent exhaustion. Together, they sprinted across the sands, the rumble of the approaching ships growing louder with each passing second. When they reached the Starlight Wanderer, Ethan didn't waste time. He activated the ship's engines, the old but reliable vessel roaring to life. The girl settled into the co-pilot's seat, her gaze fixed on the rapidly approaching ships. "Hold on," Ethan said, gripping the controls. "This is going to get bumpy." As the Wanderer lifted off, the enemy ships opened fire, their energy blasts tearing through the sand and narrowly missing the fleeing vessel. Ethan pushed the engines to their limit, weaving through the incoming fire with practiced precision. The girl remained silent, her expression a mix of fear and determination. Finally, the Wanderer broke through the atmosphere, the enemy ships falling behind as they entered the vast expanse of space. Ethan exhaled deeply, his hands trembling as he set the autopilot. "All right," he said, turning to the girl. "We're safe. For now. But you owe me some answers." The girl nodded, her luminous eyes meeting his. "My name is Alara, and I am the last of my kind." Chapter 2, Alara's Truth. The Starlight Wanderer hummed as it sailed through the quiet expanse of space. Ethan Graves slouched in the pilot's seat, his eyes darting between the console and the alien woman Alara who sat across from him. Her luminous violet skin and swirling, aurora-like eyes reflected the faint glow of the ship's instrument panel. She seemed calm now, but her earlier panic still hung heavy in the air. Ethan tapped his fingers against the armrest. "All right, Alara," he began, his voice steady but firm. "I just risked my neck to pull you out of that capsule and get us away from whoever the hell was chasing you. Now, it's time for you to tell me what's going on." Alara looked at him, her expression conflicted. "You've already seen more than you should," she said softly. "And now, you're in danger because of me." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I figured that much out when the ships started shooting at us. Who were they, anyway? And why were you buried in a capsule on a dead planet?" Alara hesitated, her gaze drifting to the stars outside the viewport. They are Exilara, hunters bound to the Syndicate. They've been chasing me for years since my people fell. Fell? Ethan asked, leaning forward. You mean, you're the last of your kind? Ilara nodded, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. My world, Lyceria, was once a beacon of peace and knowledge. We thrived for millennia, untouched by war. But the Syndicate saw our existence as a threat. They wanted our technology, our secrets, and when we refused to give it to them, they destroyed us. Ethan's chest tightened. They wiped out your entire planet? Just like that? Ilara's voice trembled as she replied. My people fought bravely, but we were not warriors. The Syndicate's forces were relentless. I survived only because I was chosen to carry our last hope, a fragment of the Lazerian core. Lazerian core? Ethan repeated, his curiosity piqued. What's that? She gestured toward her chest, her fingers brushing a faintly glowing mark on her skin. It's not an object, but an essence, a shard of Lyceria's lifeblood. It contains knowledge, power, and the key to rebuilding what was lost. The Syndicate wants it for their own ends. If they get it, they'll use it to dominate the galaxy. Ethan exhaled sharply, the weight of her words sinking in. So, that's why you were hiding on Dressara 4. You were trying to keep it away from them. Ilara nodded. The capsule was designed to keep me hidden, but they found me anyway. The weight of responsibility. Ethan leaned back in his seat, running a hand through his hair. So, let me get this straight. You're carrying some kind of ancient supertech that can reshape the galaxy, and the most dangerous group in the universe is hunting you for it. And now, I'm stuck in the middle of this mess. Ilara's expression darkened. I never meant to drag you into this, Ethan. If you want to leave me somewhere safe and walk away, I won't blame you. Ethan scoffed, shaking his head. Walk away? Lady, I just risked my life to save you. I'm not about to leave you now. Besides... He paused, a faint smirk crossing his lips. I've always had a thing for lost causes. Ilara tilted her head, her swirling eyes studying him intently. You're an unusual human. I'll take that as a compliment, Ethan replied. But if we're going to keep you safe, we need a plan. And for that, I need to know everything. What exactly does the Syndicate want with this core? Ilara hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. The core is more than a repository of knowledge. It can create and destroy. In the wrong hands, it could wipe out entire civilizations or enslave them. Ethan whistled low. No wonder they're so desperate to get their hands on you. Pursuit in the stars. The ship's proximity alarm blared suddenly, jolting them both out of the conversation. Ethan spun around, his fingers flying over the controls. A cluster of Syndicate ships had appeared on the radar, closing in fast. Looks like they found us, Ethan muttered. Hold on, Ilara. Things are about to get bumpy. The Starlight Wanderer roared as Ethan pushed the engines to their limit, the ship veering sharply to evade the incoming fire. Plasma blasts streaked past them, lighting up the darkness of space. Ilara gripped the armrests of her seat, her usually calm demeanor giving way to visible tension. They won't stop, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. They'll chase us to the ends of the galaxy. Ethan grinned, his hands moving with practiced precision as he piloted the ship through a dense asteroid field. Good thing I'm not easy to catch. The Wanderer twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding the Syndicate ships as they pursued. Ethan's skill as a pilot was evident, but the Syndicate's firepower was overwhelming. A plasma blast grazed the ship's hull, causing a violent shudder. That's going to leave a mark, Ethan muttered, his grin faltering. Ilara closed her eyes, her expression one of intense focus. A faint glow emanated from her body, and the air around her seemed to hum with energy. Suddenly, the Syndicate ships faltered, their movements growing sluggish as though they were caught in an invisible web. What the dash? Ethan began, glancing at Ilara. Is that you? She nodded, her voice strained. I can disrupt their systems, but only for a moment. Get us out of here. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. Seizing the opportunity, he accelerated, the Wanderer darting through the asteroid field and leaving the Syndicate ships behind. A hidden ally. Once they were safely out of range, Ethan set the ship on autopilot and turned to Ilara. All right, that was impressive. But if you can do that, why didn't you stop them earlier? Alara looked exhausted, her glowing eyes dim. The core grants me abilities, but they come at a cost. Using its power drains me. I can't do it often. Ethan frowned, concern flickering across his face. We need a better plan. You can't keep running forever. Alara nodded, her expression solemn. There may be someone who can help. A friend of my people, an old ally who went into hiding after Lyceria fell. If they're still alive, they might know how to stop the syndicate. Great, Ethan said. Where do we find this friend? Alara hesitated, then input coordinates into the ship's navigation system. The display lit up, showing a distant star system in uncharted space. Zars reach, she said. It's dangerous, but it's our best chance. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his seat. Dangerous is starting to feel like a running theme with you. Alara managed a faint smile. Thank you, Ethan, for not giving up. Ethan waved her off. Don't thank me yet. Let's just hope your friend likes surprise visits. As the Starlight Wanderer hurtled toward its next destination, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was just beginning and that the true danger was still ahead. Chapter 3. Zars Reach and the Secrets of the Core. The Starlight Wanderer glided through the dark expanse of uncharted space, its engines humming steadily. The destination, Zars Reach, loomed ahead, a massive nebula of swirling blues and greens, lit from within by the faint glow of scattered stars. Ethan Graves stared at the nebula on the viewport, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the console. This place gives me the creeps, Ethan muttered, breaking the silence. Why does every safe haven look like it's out of a nightmare? Alara, seated beside him, didn't answer immediately. Her luminous eyes were focused on the swirling patterns of the nebula, her expression pensive. Zars Reach has always been shrouded in mystery. It was one of the few places the syndicate feared to enter. Why? Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. What's out there? Alara turned to him, her voice calm but tinged with a hint of foreboding. Legends say the nebula is alive, that it reacts to those who enter. Only those with a purpose can pass through unscathed. Ethan chuckled nervously. Great. So, if the syndicate shows up, we just have to hope the space fog eats them? Alara didn't smile. It's not a joke, Ethan. This place is dangerous. But my people trusted Zars Reach as a sanctuary. If my ally is still alive, they'll be here. Ethan nodded, his humor fading. All right. Let's do this. The Trial of the Nebula. As the Wanderer entered the nebula, the ship's sensors went haywire. The display flickered erratically, the usual star maps replaced with static and distorted readings. Losing navigation, Ethan muttered, his hands gripping the controls. This thing's messing with the systems. Alara placed a hand on his arm. Trust your instincts. The nebula reacts to intention, not technology. Ethan gave her a skeptical look, but decided to play along. He eased his grip on the controls, letting the ship drift slightly. The glowing clouds of the nebula seemed to shift around them, creating a path that wasn't there before. Ethan steered cautiously, following the ethereal patterns as they twisted and danced like living creatures. Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed through the ship, followed by a sharp jolt that sent them both lurching forward. What the hell was that? Ethan shouted, scanning the controls. Alara's eyes widened as she stared out the viewport. The nebula tests those who enter. It senses doubt weakness. Fantastic, Ethan muttered. Now I'm being judged by space dust. The rumble grew louder, and a massive shape emerged from the swirling clouds. It was a creature, or at least it appeared to be an enormous, shifting mass of light and shadow, its tendrils reaching toward the ship. Alara closed her eyes, her hands glowing faintly. Stay calm. Focus on our purpose. Ethan gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to swerve wildly as the tendrils loomed closer. Easy for you to say. You're not the one flying. The creature paused, its tendrils hovering just inches from the ship's hull. For a moment, the air was still, the tension thick enough to cut with a blade. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature withdrew, dissolving into the nebula. Ethan exhaled sharply, his hands shaking. What was that? A guardian, Alara said simply. We passed the test. Ethan shook his head, muttering under his breath. I hate this place. The hidden sanctuary. As they emerged from the nebula, a small planetoid came into view. Its surface was covered in lush forests and crystalline structures that glowed faintly in the dim light. A single tower rose from the center of the planetoid, its spire reaching toward the stars. "That's it," Ilera said, her voice soft with relief. "They're here." Ethan guided the wanderer to a landing pad near the base of the tower. As they disembarked, Ilera hesitated, her gaze lingering on the structure. "Something wrong?" Ethan asked. "I haven't seen them in years," Ilera admitted. "I don't know if they'll even recognize me." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Hey, you made it this far. They'll listen." She nodded, and together they approached the tower. The entrance was sealed, but as they neared, the crystalline door shimmered and slid open silently. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the faint hum of energy. They were greeted by a tall, angular figure with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed faintly blue. Their movements were graceful, almost otherworldly, and their voice was melodic as they spoke. "Ilera," the figure said, inclining their head. "You've returned." "Karen," Ilera replied, her voice tinged with emotion. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here." Karen smiled faintly. "Where else would I go? Come, we have much to discuss." Unveiling the Syndicate's plan, Karen led them to a chamber deep within the tower. The room was filled with floating holograms and crystalline interfaces, each displaying complex data streams. Ethan felt out of place among the advanced technology, but Ilera seemed at ease. "You've been running for years," Karen said, addressing Ilera, "but the Syndicate grows bolder. They've accelerated their efforts to harness Lazarian technology. They're building a Weapon A fleet powered by fragments of the core." Ilera's expression darkened. "They've already taken fragments?" "Small ones," Karen confirmed, "but the core you carry is the heart of Lyseria's power. Without it, their plans will fail." Ethan frowned. "So, what do we do? Hide her forever?" Karen shook their head. "No. The core must be destroyed." Ilera's eyes widened. "Destroyed? But it's all that's left of Lyseria." "It's also the Syndicate's greatest weapon," Karen said firmly. "As long as it exists, they will never stop hunting you." Ethan glanced at Ilera, her anguish clear. "There's gotta be another way." Karen hesitated, then turned to a glowing console. "There may be. A Lazarian sanctuary, an ancient vault hidden in the air of an expanse. It's said to contain the means to dismantle the core's power without destroying it. But reaching it will be difficult." Ethan sighed. "Of course it will. Why can't anything be easy?" Karen's gaze softened. "If you succeed, you can stop the Syndicate without sacrificing your people's legacy. But time is short. They know where you are." As if on cue, the tower shook violently, alarms blaring through the chamber. "They found us," Ilera said, her voice steady but grim. Ethan clenched his fists. "Then let's make sure they regret it." The battle at the tower. The Syndicate forces descended quickly, their ships encircling the tower and raining fire upon the planetoid. Ethan and Ilera fought side by side, using the tower's defenses to repel the attackers. Karen joined them, their crystalline form glowing brightly as they manipulated the tower's systems with precision. The battle was fierce, but the Syndicate's forces were overwhelming. As their flagship loomed above, its weapons charging for a final strike, Karen turned to Ilera. "Take the core and go," they said urgently. "I'll hold them off." Ilera hesitated, her eyes filled with anguish. "I can't leave you." "You must," Karen insisted. "Your journey isn't over. The air of an expanse awaits." Ethan grabbed Ilera's arm, his voice firm. "We have to go. Now." With a heavy heart, Ilera nodded. Together, she and Ethan fled to the Starlight Wanderer, the core glowing faintly in her hands. As they took off, the tower erupted in a brilliant explosion, taking the Syndicate flagship with it. Ilera stared silently out the viewport, tears streaming down her face. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression soft. "We'll finish this," he said. "For them." Chapter 4. Secrets of Zthar's Reach. The Starlight Wanderer emerged from hyperspace into the orbit of Zthar's Reach, a desolate and foreboding planet surrounded by a dense asteroid field. Its surface was a swirling mix of deep crimson and black, marred by jagged mountain ranges and canyons carved by violent storms. Lightning flashed across the planet's turbulent atmosphere, casting eerie shadows on its rocky surface. Ethan stared at the planet through the viewport, a sinking feeling in his gut. This doesn't exactly scream friendly. Are you sure this is where your ally is? Ilera, seated beside him, nodded. Though her posture was composed, there was a tension in her voice. If Kaler, the keeper, is still alive, this is where he'll be. He went into hiding after the fall of Lyceria, and Zethar's Reach is the last place anyone would look for him. Yeah, I can see why, Ethan muttered, adjusting the ship's trajectory. The asteroid field was dense, the ship's sensors screaming warnings as Ethan weaved through the floating debris. Let's hope he's not the type to shoot first and ask questions later. As the Wanderer broke through the atmosphere, Ethan fought the ship's controls, struggling to stabilize it against the planet's violent winds. The ride was rough, the turbulence rattling every bolt in the ship, but Ethan managed to land on a rocky plateau near the coordinates Ilera had provided. All right, Ethan said, powering down the engines. We're here. Let's hope this keeper of yours is in a welcoming mood. The keeper's refuge. The air outside was thick and acrid, the sky above a swirling chaos of red and black clouds. Ethan and Ilera donned protective masks as they stepped out of the Wanderer, the howling winds tugging at their cloaks. Ilera moved with purpose, her luminous eyes scanning the jagged landscape as she led the way toward a narrow canyon. The journey was treacherous, the rocky terrain sharp and uneven. Ethan slipped more than once, muttering curses under his breath as he struggled to keep up with Ilera. She moved with a grace that belied her exhaustion, her prosthetics navigating the terrain effortlessly. At the mouth of the canyon, Ilera stopped, her gaze narrowing. We're close. Ethan followed her gaze, his eyes widening as he spotted a faint, shimmering barrier concealed within the shadows of the canyon walls. It was almost invisible, a ripple in the air that distorted the landscape behind it. What is that? Ethan asked. A cloaking field, Ilera replied. Kaler's work. It's how he stayed hidden all these years. She stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch the barrier. The shimmering field parted like a curtain, revealing a hidden entrance carved into the canyon wall. Beyond it, a dimly lit tunnel descended into the depths of the planet. Ethan hesitated. Are we sure this isn't a trap? Ilera turned to him, her expression calm but firm. We don't have a choice. With that, she stepped through the barrier, and Ethan reluctantly followed. The keeper appears. The tunnel led to a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with ancient machinery and glowing glyphs. At the center of the room stood a tall figure, cloaked in dark robes. His skin was a deep shade of blue, and his piercing silver eyes glimmered with an intensity that made Ethan shiver. Ilera Velan, the figure said, his voice resonant and commanding. I never thought I'd see you again. Ilera inclined her head, her tone respectful. Keeper Kaler. It's been a long time. Kaler stepped forward, his gaze shifting to Ethan. And who is this human? Ethan raised a hand in greeting, trying to mask his unease. Ethan Graves. Just your friendly neighborhood prospector. And the guy who saved Ilera from a syndicate death squad. Kaler's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. You've taken a great risk bringing her here, human. The syndicate's reach is vast. I'm starting to notice, Ethan said dryly. But we didn't come here for a lecture. Ilera said you might be able to help us. Kaler turned back to Ilera, his expression serious. You've activated the core, haven't you? Ilera nodded. I had no choice. The syndicate was closing in, but the core's power is unstable, and I can't keep using it without risking everything. I need your guidance. Kaler sighed, his shoulders slumping. The core's power is a double-edged sword. It can save or destroy, depending on the wielder's intent. But its instability isn't the issue, it's the connection between you and the core. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Kaler gestured to a glowing console nearby, its surface covered in intricate symbols. The core bonds with its host on a fundamental level. The more Ilera uses its power, the more it draws from her life force. If the bond isn't stabilized, it will consume her. Ethan's stomach dropped. So, what do we do? Kaler's silver eyes gleamed. There is a way to stabilize the bond, but it is dangerous. It requires accessing the core's essence directly, a process that could either strengthen the connection or sever it entirely. And if it's severed? Alara asked, her voice steady despite the implications. The core will lose its host, Kaler said gravely, and its power will become inert. A desperate choice. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the chamber. Alara's luminous eyes flickered with uncertainty as she turned to Ethan. What do you think? Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. It's your choice, Alara. But if this core is as powerful as you say, letting it go inert might be the safest option. The Syndicate can't use what doesn't work. Alara shook her head. If we let the core go inert, everything my people fought for will be lost. This is more than just power. Ethan, it's our legacy. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Then we stabilize it. But we need to be smart about this. If there's even a chance the Syndicate could track us here. They won't, Kaler interrupted. The cloaking field is impenetrable. But we must act quickly. The process will attract attention. Alara nodded, resolve hardening in her expression. Let's do it. The ritual begins. Kaler led them to a smaller chamber filled with intricate machinery and glowing crystals. At its center was a raised platform, its surface etched with the same patterns that adorned the core in Alara's chest. Lie down, Kaler instructed, gesturing to the platform. Alara obeyed, her luminous eyes glancing at Ethan one last time. Whatever happens, thank you. For everything. Ethan swallowed hard, nodding. Just hang in there. Kaler began chanting in an ancient Lazirian tongue, his hands moving over the console as the platform lit up with a radiant glow. The core in Alara's chest pulsed in sync with the patterns on the platform, its light growing brighter and more intense. Alara gasped, her body arching as the core's energy surged through her. Ethan watched helplessly, his fists clenched as Kaler worked to stabilize the bond. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently, a deep rumble echoing through the tunnels. They found us, Kaler shouted, his voice strained. The Syndicate is here. Ethan's heart raced as he drew his weapon. How? You said the field was impenetrable. Kaler's silver eyes blazed with fury. They must have tracked the core's activation. We need more time. Alara's voice, faint but steady, broke through the chaos. Finish it. I can handle this. Ethan exchanged a look with Kaler, then nodded. I'll hold them off. Do what you have to do.